My name is Jay Thompson. I'm the pastor at Pathway Church here in Conway, and we believe that story is important. Your story, my story, everybody's story. But most importantly, we believe that God wants to shape your story, your life, for a greater purpose. And one of the ways that we do that is through this podcast, where you're going to get the opportunity to hear from your neighbors, your leaders, difference makers and dreamers in our community of what makes Conway so amazing. So sit back, maybe grab you a cup of coffee, and hear someone's story about their path to Conway. Well, hey friends, my name is Jay Thompson. This is Jason Collins, a new buddy of mine. And one of the things that we love to do on this podcast is to hear people's stories. That's one of the things at Pathway Church is that we believe everybody has a story, and your story matters. And what you also find is this, is that your story, my story, a lot of people like to hear other people's stories. And so that's what this podcast is all about, is giving people an opportunity here in Conway, South Carolina, to talk about a little bit about their story. So here's the journey that we're going to go on. In just a second, I'm going to give Jason an opportunity to introduce himself. He knows himself a lot better than I do, so I'm going to give him an opportunity to do that. And after he does that, we're going to go like we normally do on our podcast, and we'll go through the path, talking about your purpose, talking about your arrival here into Conway, what that looked like, and then kind of how that has transformed you and how you've seen the community transform. And then we'll land on the last one of heart. That's the thing that kind of, what drives you. I'm probably going to couch those in the 3 questions that John Maxwell asked, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And then we'll finish with our wheel of real, where you get a chance to spin the wheel and get one of the 24 questions that he doesn't know what I'll be asking him. But again, my name is Jay Thompson from Pathway Church, and one of the things at Pathway Church is that we believe that no matter where you're at on your journey with Jesus, it's a whole lot easier to journey if you have people of like-minded and like faith that are journeying with you. And through a common friend, Chris, Jason and I got an opportunity to meet, and we spent, an hour plus sitting over at Starbucks talking about kind of who I am, who you are. And there's so many intersections on thoughts and beliefs and all of that. So, Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell everybody kind of who you are. Tell us about your family. Tell us about your background a little bit, and anything you want to add to that.
Sure. Well, I'm Jason Collins. I'm the pastor at St. Paul's Anglican Church here in Conway. Married to Shauna. We've almost 31 years now. We've got 2 grown children. Our daughter, Hannah, is finishing up med school, and her husband, Daniel, is also a Conway native. And then our son, Duncan, is a Coastal Carolina graduate and a freelance graphic designer.
Okay. All right. And have you always been in ministry?
No, I have not been in ministry. In fact, I never thought I would ever be in ministry because I had my own plan and I had my own agenda, and I did not want God to mess up my plans. So I fought it for a long, long time. I came to Conway just over 30 years ago. I was actually hired as a city planner.
Wow.
And so I worked at City Hall for about 8 years, and I realized I had helped developers and other builders probably make, in those days, a lot of money, about over $300 million. And I thought, I could probably do this for myself. So I resigned. I started my own construction company with a business partner. It's called Coastal Construction Group. And I did that for about 7 or 8 years, all the while fighting the Lord as hard as I could, knowing I was really called to do ministry, but I just didn't want to do it. And I finally figured out it just takes too much energy to fight the creator of the universe.
Yeah.
And so I finally
That is not a fight you're going to win.
No, never. You're going to lose every single time. And so finally I just decided, in our tradition, you have a very thorough discernment process just to verify that you really are called and you're not just hearing voices in your head. And I finally got the courage to tell my wife that I think I'm being called to the ministry. And she said, well, I think you should go through the process, because if they tell you no and that you're hearing voices, you need some professional help. But if you're actually hearing the voice of the Lord, you probably should be obedient.
Yeah.
And so I entered the
That's good
discernment.
advice.
Yeah, she's a smart lady. So I entered our discernment process, which took about, I don't know, almost a year. And I was never told no. So apparently I was hearing the voice of the Lord correctly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll probably take even a deeper dive into that when we talk about your purpose
Yeah.
and kind of how you came to that sense of purpose in your life. So, but before we jump into that, I like to do the this and that section to give people a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit, maybe
Okay.
hear some of the fun stuff that maybe, oh, I'm that way too or not. So let's start with the first one. Are you a morning person or are you a night owl?
I'm a morning person. I'm much better at 5:30 in the morning than I am at 9 o'clock at night. Things are starting to shut down for me.
You know, there's a lot of people in this world that don't know that there's actually two 5:30s. 5:30 in the morning for a lot of people, they're like, I didn't even know that. I'm just sleeping on
Yeah.
through. So,
Well, and
have you always been that way?
No, I think I taught myself to be that way. I found out, especially when I was really growing in my faith and trying to figure it all out, I found out that my family, they're not morning people. And I just needed that quiet time, just me and the Lord, to read the Bible, pray, journal. And if I waited till my family got up, then game was on. And
Right.
I would never get that time back. And so I just started to make it a habit of getting up and having that quiet time, just me and the Lord.
Awesome.
At the crack of dawn.
All right. So we're about an hour away from lunch or so. So let me ask this: are you I want a home cooked meal, or are you a let's go out to eat person?
Yes.
Yes. Let's just as long as you eat, right? Okay.
I have not met too many meals that I'm not interested in.
So,
but I will say this: sometimes you can go out too much, and you're just like,
all sorts taste the same.
Yeah, I just need to eat a good home cooked meal.
All right, so home cooked meal, you're gonna say this is what my favorite home cooked meal. What's that gonna look like?
Probably. I mean, I like steak. I love fried chicken. We don't fry chicken at home for whatever reason. It's messy, and kind of worried. Oh, what if I don't cook the chicken enough? I think for me, good comfort food is chicken bog or like a beef stew. Anything with rice and gravy. I mean, gravy is gold for me.
I got you.
Fresh vegetables. That's good stuff.
Well, let's talk about this chicken bog thing because I moved here from Georgia, just kind of south of Athens, Georgia, Lake Oconee area. And when we moved here, we would talk about getting together with people and stuff, and they go, "Don't worry, I will just make chicken bog." I never have heard of chicken bog ever in my life.
Right.
So you mentioned that's kind of one of your comfort foods. And what I have found about chicken bog, one, I like it. Two, nobody makes it the same way.
Right.
So I have some folks that like, it's just the rice, it's just a little chicken in there, it's very minimal ingredients. And then I've had some others, it's like, I'd almost call it Brunswick stew to the sense it's got so much stuff in it. So where in the chicken bog realm, where do you land on super flavorful or the basic?
Probably in the middle. And I grew up in Marlboro County, so I'm only 70 miles from where I grew up. And we ate chicken bog in Marlboro County, but here in Horry County, it's like its own food group. And people are serious about chicken bog. When growing up, if somebody needed to do a fundraiser for a cause or a family in need, we might do barbecue, vinegar-based barbecue. Here, it's chicken bog. And so I figured it out and kind of did my own recipe. I like it with some spice, but it doesn't have to be super spicy. But me personally, I usually add a little bit of hot sauce on top of it just to spice it up. Yeah, so I like it basic, but I put kielbasa sausage in mine because I think the fat helps to flavor the rice a little bit more. And anyway, so middle ground.
Yeah, it's I found out that about the fundraising thing. I was going to a high school basketball game and they were doing a fundraiser, and like you said, the fundraisers, if it was a meal, typically was a barbecue, either a pulled pork or barbecue chicken. If it wasn't that, if you're fundraising, you're probably selling candy bars or something like that. Nope, chicken bog, man. And I've never seen so many plates of chicken bog in one basketball gym ever as I did that night. And everybody, whatever they're raising money for, I'm sure they exceeded their goal that night through chicken
Well,
bog.
if you think about it, it makes sense because it's really comfort food, but it's really kind of poor people comfort food. And I don't mean that in an insulting kind of way. I just mean if you can cook a lot of it for a little bit of money and it stretches because the rice swells up and chicken's affordable. And so it's a really easy way to cook a really big meal for not a lot of money. And then, of course, if you're using it for a fundraiser, then you don't have so much tied up in it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
All right. So you're going to watch a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go to the theater to watch the movie, or are you going to say we're going to stay home and we're going to stream the movie? Which way?
Sounds like a cop out, but it's kind of both. It kind of depends on what's going on. Um, there's nothing like the movie theater experience. Um, the other side of that is, if you go hungry, you could spend $50 on popcorn.
That's right.
For a $10 movie. So, but there's nothing like being in the theater. For the whole experience and the surround sound and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I believe there are definitely certain movies you want to watch.
Yeah, some you can definitely wait and watch it on TV.
Yeah. Gotcha. And my wife and I love to go to the movies, and we're as guilty as anybody of buying the, $20 Coke and the $50 popcorn and doing all of that.
We're captive audience.
There's just something about the popcorn at the theater. It's part of it, I guess, of the experience.
Yep.
So, let me ask this: so, born 70 miles from here, are you a Clemson Tiger or a South Carolina Gamecock?
I was born and raised a Gamecock because my dad went to Carolina and my mom got a master's at Carolina. I actually did my undergraduate degree at Wofford, and I was planning on going to law school, which is a long story, but an important part of my story. That didn't work out. I took the law school entrance exam with the flu, thinking it can't be that hard, and it really was. And I had a fever of 102. And
oh, wow.
That didn't pan out.
Probably some interesting answers on there.
Oh, yeah. I don't even remember what it was about. But anyway, but I was always really interested in real estate development and construction. And I found I had a degree in history. I knew that I really probably couldn't do much with a history degree and eat 3 times a day. But I found a program at Clemson, a master's degree in city planning. And so I became the black sheep of the family and went and spent 2 years at Clemson. And I had a great experience. Most of the propaganda that Carolina fans tell you about Clemson is not true. I had a great experience at Clemson, and I got a job out of it. So I'm a Clemson fan.
All right. So if they're playing each other, you're pulling for the Tigers.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Although I will admit, my very first Carolina Clemson game as a Clemson student, I was torn. So I wore a Clemson shirt and a Carolina hat.
Oh, wow. So you were hated by both sides.
Well, it's a funny thing. My dad told me he was going to cut me out of the will because I was going to Clemson. And so I was conflicted. And then I realized, half of nothing's still nothing. So I'm all in. I was all in before Dabo Sweeney made that a thing.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So last this or that question is, are you a play it safe person, or are you a let's take the leap, let's just go for it person?
I think it depends on the situation. I think more often than not, I'm a play it safe kind of person. I'm a steward, so I can take a leap, but I really have to think it through and think about all the ins and outs and ups and downs before I take the leap. But so a little of both, but I would tend to be on more of the cautious side.
Yeah. So if you got a decision to make, you're typically going to go from spending time thinking through it as opposed to maybe a gut feeling.
Yes, because sometimes you get these gut feelings that really could be indigestion. So I trust the Lord. I don't trust me all the time.
There you go. That's good.
So I try to pray through things, especially big decisions. The old cliche, it's important to sleep on big decisions. I think that's a real thing. And plus, I like to take naps. So.
Hey, 2 birds with 1 stone there.
That's right.
All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to shift and we're going to go through the path.
Yep.
Purpose, arrival, transformation, heart. So we're going to start with purpose. And I have some questions. I know I had to exchange these with you,
Yep.
these questions, so you kind of be prepared to know where we're going. And I'll probably ask some follow-up questions when it gets to that. But so let's talk about this. First question, I'll start out with this whole thing of purpose is, what are you most passionate about or most committed to right now in this season of life for you?
That's a great question. And partly just because of my vocation now, my calling, but just partly because of what I see going on in the world. I'm very passionate about teaching the gospel, preaching the gospel. Um, we live in the South, and even though it's changing very quickly, I mean, we are in the Bible Belt, um, but that can actually be a dangerous thing too, because the culture's still kind of Christian-ish, and there's a church on every corner, and we pray at football games and things like that. And yet, I really think most people don't know what the gospel is, and I fell into that category. I mean, I was raised in the church, but I describe my journey. I was a churchian and not really a Christian. I knew it was something you should do. I knew it was important. It wasn't that I didn't believe, but I really didn't understand the gospel. And I see that a lot in our culture. And so the gospel is transforming. It makes a huge eternal difference.
Right.
And so I'm really passionate about teaching and preaching the gospel so people can understand. I mean, I guess they're going to have to commit themselves. My faith won't save them, but now that I understand it and I see so many people that don't, I'm really passionate about that. And I love to see light bulbs go off when people kind of have an aha moment, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
You just said something there that my faith won't save them. I think there's a lot of people, as you said, there are positives, excuse me, there are positives and there are challenges of growing up in a quote unquote Christian community, Christian environment. And that sometimes you can think, because my dad has faith, I have faith. So talk to me real quick about what do you mean that for someone to personally own their faith, to not just know about the gospel, to be, you use the word transformed, to be transformed by the gospel. What does that look like? Because your faith can't save me, my faith can't save you. It's got to be a personal thing. Talk to me about what does that mean for someone to not just know the gospel, but to allow the gospel to transform them?
Well, I'll kind of phrase it in a story. So my parents were very active in our local church growing up, and my grandparents were active in the church. And so I've got a long family history, and I've got a lot of pastors in my family going way, way back. If my research is correct, John Rogers, who helped translate the Bible into English with William Tyndale, is my 12th great grandfather.
Oh, wow.
And I had another, like a 9th great grandfather, Samuel Maycock, who left England and went to Jamestown because he had gone to seminary at Cambridge and they needed pastors in Jamestown. But again, their faith wouldn't save me. But I can tell you exactly where I was when it really clicked for me. I was actually in a stewardship teaching at St. Paul's before I was ordained. I was a member at our church for 13 years before I was ordained. And Tripp Jeffords, who was our pastor at the time, he brought in someone to do a talk on stewardship. And it was so powerful. And it started at Genesis and went to Revelation and explained the entire Bible in about 20 minutes, and including stewardship and why that was important. And I sat there, and I'm a front row sitter because it helps me to pay attention, makes me pay attention. And I sat there just enthralled at this, and I thought, I believe that. I believe that. It's true. And so that really started me on my journey, and just having children also helped with that. I realized that it was my responsibility to teach the faith to my children, but they would have to accept it for themselves. Right. So my parents, my ancestors' faith wouldn't save me. My faith won't save my kids. But if you don't expose people to it,
Right. So your faith can't save someone else, but your faith can be an influence.
It can influence somebody else for sure.
For somebody else.
I think we're all called to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. So let's cut this out in a second.
Okay.
Shoo. Too much pollen.
A lot of pollen.
Another question is, what about Conway made this a place where you wanted to invest your time, energy, and your heart?
Because I like to eat on a regular basis. When I was finishing at Clemson, I applied for jobs everywhere, and this is early 90s. The economy in the area was okay, but especially this area and the lower part of South Carolina, Bill Clinton closed Myrtle Beach Air Force Base, and he closed the Naval Base in Charleston, so the economy was kind of in turmoil because those were good economic engines for our community. And so I applied everywhere, and I was about to have a master's degree thinking that was going to be my ticket. Quite honestly, the only interview I got was with the city of Conway. And so, again, I like to eat on a pretty regular basis. So that brought me here, and so I invested my time, energy, and everything. You bloom where you're planted.
Right.
So,
yeah,
and I got planted here.
So how have you, about Conway, how has that influenced you as a person? How has that influenced you in your family life? How has being a part of, we're going to talk about your specific arrival here in just a second, but how has Conway, been integrated into who you are as a person, as a family?
I think for a variety of reasons. I'm a South Carolina native. My family's lived in the PD area of South Carolina for at least 250 years, maybe a little longer. And so this is home, this part of the world. I did marry a girl from Greenville just to make sure my family tree was branching out far enough. But this is home. And so really when I came to Conway, it was kind of a continuation of what I had grown up in Bennettsville. Just a great small town atmosphere. It's just the potential here was so much greater. Being close to the coast, people intentionally investing back in the community. Even 30 years ago, it was evident that was going on, and so it's just been a huge blessing being here.
Last question in this whole thing of purpose. So I wrote this down. If someone close to you had to describe you in one word, what do you think that one word would be and why?
It kind of depends on who that person is. I think different people would describe me in different ways. I would hope that people would describe me as authentic. What you see is what you get. And I tell people, that are come to my church and, say they'd like to join our community. And I sit down and kind of do a little interview with them and answer questions. And fortunately, in our tradition, your relationship with the pastor doesn't have to be the primary reason that you attend the church. But I tell people anyway, because I know it plays a part in church membership. But I tell people, I say, look, if you don't like me now, you're not going to like me later, because what you see is what you get. So I would hope that word would be authentic.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's now go to the whole arrival. So you said you grew up 70 miles from here. What originally brought you to Conway? Was it, and I think it sounds like job.
Yeah.
Some of those things. So talk to us about that process of as you were looking for the job and stuff like that, that brought you here. Was that a smooth transition? Was that was this I never thought about Conway, or kind of talk us through that process of getting here?
Well, growing up close to here, and my family's been coming down to the south end of the beach. My great-great-grandparents used to come down to Merle's Inlet from Marion, and at that time it was a 2-day trip. And my great-great-grandfather would load up my great-grandmother and her brothers and sisters in a horse-drawn wagon, and they would leave Marion and they'd stop at Sweetwater Branch Baptist Church, which is now on Highway 544. that building that's there is not the original building, but they would stop and they would actually spend the night on the pews. They'd sleep on the pews. And then Granddaddy Smith would put money in the collection plate for rent because they spent the night in the church. And then they'd load the wagon up and they'd go to Merle's Inlet.
Wow.
It was a 2-day trip. So I'm very familiar with the area. I was very active in the Boy Scouts, and we used to camp out on what's now the very end of Gardner Lacey Road. That there was a lot of Boy Scout camping that took place. Clear Pond.
Yeah.
That was Boy Scout camping.
Okay.
Way back. And anyway, we would come through Conway on our way to Clear Pond to camp, and we'd stop and eat supper at Wendy's. Wendy's was kind of sort of a new thing back then, 40, 45 years ago. And I was like, man, Conway's got everything. They got a Wendy's. Why can't we get a Wendy's in Bennettsville? So I was pretty familiar with Conway, just being so close and driving through here, going to the beach my whole life. What brought me here was that interview. That was the interview opportunity that I got when I was finishing my degree at Clemson. And my wife is originally from Greenville. She was finishing dental school at the same time and finishing her residency. And so we were trying to look, we knew I'd already proposed, we were going to get married. So we were kind of trying to look in the same areas. And Shauna being from the upstate, you know, she was looking at Greenville and Spartanburg, Columbia. And I was trying to do the very same thing. And there just weren't any opportunities at the time. And so I said I had this opportunity to interview in Conway. And so I stopped by her apartment in Columbia. She was doing a residency at the time. And she's like, Conway? She's like, where's the mall? And ironically, her family had a place in Apache Campground her whole life. So I'm like, you know the Horry County area better than you think you do. And so Conway's got Coastal Center, which is now being remodeled for the second time in the past 30 years. But anyway, she was not real thrilled. And that's not a slight on Conway. That's just was not in her train of thought.
Right.
And so I actually called my dad and I said, you know, Shauna's not interested in the lower part of the state at all. And so maybe I'm just not going to go to this interview. And my dad's a pretty wise fella. And he said, you know, you should go to the interview anyway. He said, because if nothing else, it'll be a good interview experience for you. And then just see what happens. And so I said, okay, well, I'm halfway there. I had been in Clemson. I stopped at her place. So I came on, and it was a really cool experience. So growing up in Marlboro County, the main crop is cotton. And so I'm just used to all the sights and the smells of cotton. And some of them are poisonous. You know, when you spray the defoliant on plants to make the leaves drop, or you spray for boll weevils. Anyway, so I'm on I-20. I'm driving through Bishopville, which is kind of where cotton, the cotton area in South Carolina really starts pretty heavy. And my air conditioner was broken, so I had my windows rolled down. And I'm driving through Bishopville, and I could smell the fertilizer and the chemicals in the cotton fields. And I said, ooh, this kind of smells like home. That might be a good sign. Huh. And because I was envious that Conway had a Wendy's, I was a little early. I went to Wendy's and got something to drink before I went to City Hall. And I walk in the door of City Hall, and I didn't know really what to expect. I really kind of thought, at that time, the city administrator had been asked to leave. So I thought that my interview was just going to be with the assistant administrator who was acting in that role till they hired somebody. And I kind of sat down in the conference room at City Hall with the Inquisition. And it was Linda Vereen, who was the acting city administrator. It was the building inspector. It was 3 city council members. So, I mean, it was a full group, but it felt like home. And I walked out of there, and I thought, they're going to offer me that job, and I'm going to take it. And now I got to go back to Columbia and tell Shauna, would she be willing to look in the lower part of the state? And anyway, so sure enough, a week later, I got the call. This was March. This time of the year. And
What year was this?
This would have been 1995. And so I wasn't going to even finish my degree for 2 more months. But they offered me the job, and I took it. And I said, now, you know, I can't come till May. All right, that's okay. We like you. We'll hold it for you.
Wow.
So here I am.
So, how'd you sell that back home? How'd you sell that to your wife
Well,
to come here?
yeah, interesting. So, I said, look, I don't have anything else at the moment. And I told him, I said, I can't commit. I want to commit. I can't fully commit because my fiance's got to
Right.
find a job as well. I said, but if you can be patient, if you'll hold the job for me, I'll ask her to look in this area. And so she said, okay, well, I'll at least look. And so sure enough, she's a dentist, and they were dentists in the area that were looking for an associate. And so we actually came down here a couple times, and she had some interviews. And while she was interviewing in the dental practice, I came to Conway and just met more people and kind of got to know the community more. And then she got an offer, and so that kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah. So 95, you graduate, got the offer in March, graduated May.
hmm
When did y'all move here?
I moved here first. As a matter of fact, my very first day at City Hall was Memorial Day, because back then you didn't get Memorial Day as a holiday. That was a Yankee holiday. Um, but anyway, my first day at City Hall was Memorial Day, and then Shauna didn't finish her residency until July the 1st. So I moved here, lived over at Myrtle Greens. Myrtle Greens was kind of new and cool, and I lived there. And then when she moved to town, she actually found somebody that needed a roommate on Lee's Landing, right on the Waccamaw River. So she lived there, and then we actually bought a house. And the last thing we did before we left Conway to go get married is I moved my stuff into the house, and then we were going to move her into the house after the honeymoon.
Yeah.
And so we left and drove up to the upstate and got married.
Awesome. So how long did it take for you to stop feeling like I'm new in Conway to Conway is home for you?
I think it happened for me fairly quickly, just because again I'm from this part of the world. In a lot of ways, Conway is very similar to Bennettsville, my hometown. Uh, I felt like this was home quicker than other people thought it was my home.
Mm.
The one thing that I found in Conway, and I guess because Horry County was so isolated for so long, that outsiders are kind of looked upon with suspicion. And so I thought, well, hey, I'm in, man. I'm a Conwayite now, and I was told several times, no, not really, which was kind of hurtful. I mean, it was like, how long do you have to live here before you're from here? Um, but anyway, I think it with time,
Yeah.
the community certainly grew on me. I grew on the community.
Yeah. Do you think that is still something today that, you're not born and bred here, or do you feel like the community itself is more open to other people arriving here?
I think it's more open, partly just by sheer numbers. I mean, Conway's grown so much in the past 30 years, and I think we're really just on the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
So now there are many more people that live in Conway that aren't from here. So I think it's easier now. But I thought, gosh, I grew up in Bennettsville, which is only 70 miles from here. My dad's whole side of the family is all from Marion. I'm related to almost everybody in Marion County, man, which is right across the Little PD River from Horry County, and yet I was still looked on as an outsider by old timers.
It's funny how, and that's not just this area, but it's funny how rivers, one side or the other, can define whether or not you're part of this community or not part of this community. Yeah. That's I've noticed that you cross the Waccamaw, depending on which side of that you're in, it's perceived very differently, but it's a very different community on each side of that.
So, and maybe you experience this in Georgia and other places too, but I just remember growing up, old timers talking about the slow side of the river and the fast side of the river. Mm-hmm. And I would say, without fail, the slow side of the river, whichever side that might be, um, is the side that um, develops slower, and the fast side of the river develops faster. And really, Conway, I think, is on the fast side of the river. But yeah, that river is really a line of demarcation.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to transition. I'm going to use this question to kind of transition into the transformation part. Is that if someone was thinking about moving to Conway, uh, what would you tell them? Hey, Conway would be great because how they're looking. They go, I'm thinking about looking at Conway. Jason, why should we move there?
I think Conway is very unique. It still has that small town atmosphere, and yet it's not really a small town much anymore. By my standards, but
Right.
somebody that's coming here from New Jersey might think, oh man, this place is tiny. But relatively speaking, for South Carolina, it's not a tiny place anymore. In fact, the Horry Independent just last week said that the population of Horry County has now topped 443,000. So now Horry County is second in population only to Greenville. We've passed Charleston and Richland County, which is where Columbia is. So it's growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, the population has doubled in the 31 years that I've lived here.
Wow.
So if somebody said, why do I want to live in Conway? I would definitely say that small town atmosphere. The really good thing about Conway is you're close enough to the beach and all the touristy things if you want to do that, but you're also far enough away where you really could stay out of that and avoid that if you wanted to.
Right.
Um, and this part of South Carolina has been so rural and so isolated for so long. And really, again, right across the river is a totally different scenario. And so there are just opportunities here that aren't even across the river,
right,
that people can enjoy. So I think that small town feel, even though we're not really that small anymore.
Yeah. All right. So not being small anymore, 31 years here. What have been some of the biggest changes and transformations in our community here that in Conway itself that you've seen over the past 3 decades?
Certainly the growth, the residential growth in construction and development. And when I was city planner, I just kind of had this feeling that we were on the tip of the iceberg of this growth. And I think for a variety of reasons, um, whether it was intentional or unintentional, I think there were some of the growth was just kind of stifled. Some of it is just South Carolina. South Carolina has very difficult annexation state regulations, and so it's difficult for communities to annex property that could encourage growth. Um, but we just decided that the city staff and the council, we just decided to let's be a little more intentional and a little more aggressive about that. Not necessarily to push growth, but to at least have a say-so in the growth, because in South Carolina, because it's difficult for cities to annex property, growth can happen outside the city, and people want the city services without paying for the city services. And you can get growth that is not controlled by your zoning or your own rules and regulations. And so we just decided to be really intentional about annexing vacant tracts of land that were in kind of growth pressure areas, so the community could kind of have a say in what it was like. Just the total amount of residential growth. And I can remember this would have been 1998. We kind of did a comprehensive plan that the state requires in 1997. And in 1998, we finally issued 100 building permits that year. And I said, see, I told you.
Yeah.
I told you. And now at City Hall, I think they issue probably 100 a month. So just a tremendous growth has just really changed the community. Some for the good, some maybe not so good. We don't seem to have a really good handle on infrastructure. We don't have a real good handle on stormwater management, and so we deal with a lot of flooding. And quite honestly, my family farmed for hundreds of years, and most of the prime agricultural land is now residential neighborhoods. And so,
Yeah.
if you build on all the fields that grow your food, where are you going to get your food?
Right.
So, I mean, there's give and take.
Yeah. A lot of balance when it comes to that. Of, do you fill the swamp in and build houses, or do you enjoy the natural comfort that getting out into that fishing, exploring, and doing, and all of that it may provide? There's that balance.
Well, and there was this attitude, and I totally understand it. I mean, I'm from a small town myself, but there was this kind of attitude in the leadership of the community, like, we want to protect what we've got. We don't want our little corner of paradise to change. And what we finally had to come to terms with is that it's changing whether we want it to or not. So we might as well try to
Influence
seize the opportunities
Yeah.
of the change and influence the change instead of it influencing us. And so that was just kind of a mindset that I think that leadership in the community kind of had to go through in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I'll never forget 2020 when during the pandemic, everything was shut down and college football was struggling, and
Right.
people didn't have opponents to play because they couldn't travel or didn't want to travel. And BYU was looking for somebody to play, and Coastal had an open spot in their schedule. And so BYU decided to come here to play Coastal, and ESPN Game Day came here. I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
And we were getting lots of national coverage in Conway, South Carolina. And I texted the city administrator, and I said, we annexed the college and a lot of stuff east of the Waccamaw River. We annexed that in 1999. And I said, in 1999, we thought one day this is going to be a really good marketing tool for Conway. And I said, today's the day.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that I got to kind of see all that come full circle.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you wanted to be able to have influence in how the community was changing as opposed to being influenced by it.
Mm-hmm.
For you, coming here, moving 31 years ago, city planner, today, local pastor. So let's talk about that journey a little bit. We talked about kind of how that calling came about, but that's a big change for you over the past 30 years. How did that come about? Did being in Conway itself have any influence? Did people in Conway have influence in that whole calling and that going from being city planner to local pastor?
Absolutely. So, hindsight's 2020, and looking back now, I kind of think I was probably called to ministry when I was probably about 6 years old. I didn't really want to do it, and I think anybody that really sets out to want to do that probably needs some professional help. It's a great calling, but it's a difficult calling. And I would encourage. I wouldn't talk somebody out of it, but I would say you need to really pray through this with some other wise counselors just to make sure. But anyway, so my plan was totally different. Again, the law school thing didn't work out like I thought, but real estate and construction did. And so my plan was to make a lot of money in real estate and development and then run for office. I've always been very interested in politics. And but all the while, the Lord's just kind of snickering, thinking, yeah, you just wait. I got something else for you. Anyway, so I went through that process and just realized, yeah, I'm definitely being called and I should probably be obedient. There were people along the way that influenced me in that journey. My parents being one, because my parents were very committed Christian, and we lived 5 blocks from my home church in Bennettsville, and we were there every time the door was open. And if the door wasn't open, it didn't matter because my dad had a key because he was on the church council. So that played a big role in things. Trip Jeffords, who was the pastor at St. Paul's, Trip was very influential in my personal growth in the faith, and that really blessed me, and he opened my eyes to a lot of things. And actually, I took him to lunch one day when I thought, I don't know what's going on. Something's wrong with me. And I took him to lunch, and I'll never forget, we were actually at the old El Cerro Mexican restaurant, which is now Margaritas, I think. Anyway, I took him to lunch. I said, man, you're going to think this is crazy, but I really think the Lord's calling me to ministry. And he kind of started laughing. He's like, well, you big dummy. Everybody knows you've been called to ministry except you.
Wow.
And he just encouraged me and helped me along the way, and that was influential. My wife was very supportive. She was kind of going through her own growth process, and she even told me, she said, if you had told me this 3 years ago, I would have said, okay, you just go do your thing. You go to seminary. I'll stay here, work, raise the kids. You come home on the weekends, whatever. But she had been going through this growth and transformation process, and she said, I can see it in you, and I'm ready for that now. So let's go through this process and see what happens. Charlie Johnson was kind of a mentor of mine. Charlie was a doctorate internist here in Conway, and he was a member of St. Paul's. He was very encouraging to me and kind of mentored me when I was really young in the faith, and that blessed me a lot. And it was hard, but it was a huge privilege to do Charlie's funeral. I guess about 4 years ago. It kind of felt like it had come full circle.
Yeah.
There's a guy that's a member of our church. His name is Blair Zoll, and Blair and I sang in the choir together. This was, I don't know, this was probably 5 or 6 years before I even decided to answer the call. And we were leaving choir practice one night. He said, you don't know this, but you're going to be a pastor one day, and you're going to do my funeral. And I looked at him, I said, you have lost your mind. Unfortunately, Blair's still kicking. I have not done his funeral yet, but he was prophetic, and I am his pastor now.
Wow.
So there were a lot of people that just kind of influenced that journey and confirmed what the Lord's already called me to do.
So let me go off script for a second.
Can I stop for just a second?
Sure.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
I feel like I got on a rabbit trail.
No, I think you absolutely answered the question and I think the way you answered it was perfect, because it leads me to this of going, there's a lot of people I could ask that question of who's influenced their life. And they would draw a blank. That they have not had a supportive mom and dad. They haven't had a spouse who goes, hey, we're in this journey together. They haven't had older people who poured their lives into them. They haven't had, buddies, friends who have done that.
Yeah.
So,
well, can I go back? Can I go back and add a couple?
Sure,
people
absolutely.
That are important? There's really probably 3 other people that in my family that were influential in me answering this call. 2 of which are my children, because when my daughter Hannah was born first, and I was holding her for the first time, and I realized, this is a new life. This is a new person. This person did not exist in this capacity just a few minutes ago. And so I realized miracles are real. That junk's real.
Yeah.
And that was an eye-opening experience. And then the second experience, it also involved my daughter, but it related to my son, because my son Duncan was born just before 6 o'clock in the morning. And so when Shauna realized she needed to go to the hospital, it was about 3 o'clock. And so I had to go in and wake up my daughter to take her to a friend's house. And I felt like, this sounds weird, but it felt like me waking up Hannah to tell her that her baby brother was going to get born was almost kind of like the angels announcing to the shepherds that Jesus was about to be born, and not that my son's the Savior. But I thought, okay, I understand that now.
Yeah.
I'm waking her up because we're all about to experience another miracle. And then a lady that I reference a lot in sermons, and I call her my grandmother. She's not my biological grandmother, but she and my grandmother were best friends. And my grandmother died before I was even born, and so her name was Teenie Parks. She lived next door to us. She actually sold the house that I grew up in to my grandparents,
Oh,
and
wow.
then she built a house next door. Um, because my grandmother died before I was born, she was my grandmother. And when I went next door to tell her that I really felt like the Lord was calling me to ministry, the first thing out of her mouth was, "Then you better start reading Psalm 91."
Hmm.
And I said, "Okay, why?" And she said, "Because Psalm 91 is a prayer of protection, and you're going to need protection. You're going to need protection from the world, the flesh, and the devil." And Psalm 91 is a metaphor for God covering His people with His wings, like an angel, or like a mother. I don't know if you know this story, but farmers will burn the edges of their fields after the harvest, and mother quails will actually wrap their chicks under her wings to protect them from the fire.
Wow.
Anyway, so that was that. I understand that now that I've been in
Yeah.
ministry for a long time, but
Absolutely.
But so my children and Teeny, my adopted grandmother,
Yeah.
were very influential and helpful in answering that call.
So, one, you've been incredibly blessed to have those people. Not everybody has those. If someone's listening to this going, man, I wish I had a teeny.
Teeny.
I wish
Well, her
I
real
had,
name was Ivatine.
Yeah.
but if your name
But
was Ivatine,
you'd
be
go by
Teeny
Teeny
too.
as well.
Yeah.
So, how would you encourage somebody to go find those people that can speak into their lives?
They're there. And sometimes they're really obvious, and sometimes you might have to go looking for them. But I think there are. I think number one, being connected to a church community is so very helpful. And I hear all the time, "I'm spiritual, I'm just not religious." And
Right.
I say, "Well, I'm not religious either, because Christianity is a relationship. It's
Right.
not religion." So you have that relationship with Jesus, but then that relationship plays itself out in relationship with other believers, which is called the church. So having a church community where those people, maybe there are going to be some that are ahead of you on your journey, there are going to be some that are behind you, and so you do life together. That's super important. It's a great place to find people that'll pour into you.
Yeah.
I think teachers, um, anybody that is in kind of a place of authority in our lives can. There's a lot of people in authority that do negative things in our lives, but I think there are teachers and people like that can pour into us. I know the Conway Police Department, they're trying to pour into young people, because sometimes you think, "Oh, here comes the popo," and you're scared of the police.
Right.
Well, the police are really there to protect us and help us. But anyway, I think
Yeah.
if you look, you can find those people.
Yeah. I think one of the things that keeps us from doing that is, I think it's all wrapped up in the fear, and I think it's the
Absolutely.
fear of, what if they say no?
Yep.
Or, which I think sometimes this is the greatest fear. I'm fearful they're going to know who I really am.
Mm-hmm. And that's a real thing. So I would say two things. Number one, it's a numbers game. And I learned that in the construction business. When sometimes people would just call us and say, "I'd like for you to do this for me."
Right.
That was a blessing.
Sure.
But a lot of times we were having to bid things. And I never really ran the numbers, but the number that I use is we probably had a 20% hit rate.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have to bid 10 jobs to get 2. Now I can look back and say, well, those 8 that we didn't get, that was a blessing. But it's a numbers game. So you gotta cast those seeds out, so some of them might take root. So yes, you might get rejected. But if somebody won't mentor you and pour into you, then you probably just got protected.
Yeah.
So it is a numbers game. Somebody might say no, or somebody might pour into you in a different way. But anyway, so I'd say it's a numbers game. Keep looking. And the other thing I would say is, you're going to have to edit this, because now I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember what number 2 was.
It's about the thing of the fear of they're going to know who I really am.
Oh, exactly. So yeah, and I don't think you can I don't think you need a lot of mentors, because you do need somebody that you can just trust to be real with. Um, you know, the term hypocrite comes from a Greek word that means a mask.
Right.
Back in the Greek theater, the actors wouldn't wear makeup, but they'd wear a mask, because a lot of times they were playing multiple roles, so they could take a mask on and off very quickly. And we all wear masks. Even I wear masks sometimes. But you got to find at least a few people that you can just take your mask off and just be real with. And that takes time. It takes a time investment or a relational investment, because you don't want to do that with just any and everybody. And just got to find those right people that are willing to do the same with you. I was just blessed that I found some.
Yeah, and I think I would add that sometimes the best way to find a mentor is to go mentor somebody else. And that in the process of you doing that, you never know the other people you meet. You never know the other. And anybody I've ever quote unquote mentored, I've got as much, if not more, out of the relationship myself.
Yeah.
And so, but again, give it a shot.
Right.
Right. My guess is this: is you're probably going to have a better than 20% closing rate.
I think you probably will.
If you're asking, going, man, I think you've got your life together. I'd love to know your secret. Could I have 30 minutes?
Right.
I don't know anybody that would. One, they're going to go, wow, they think I'm successful. They think I've got something worthy to say.
Yeah.
Most people are going to be able to at least give you that a little bit of that way.
And you know, I didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to go get me a mentor today.
Right.
But just in my own relationships with other people, I had a group of guys that came around me, and they weren't trying to mentor me, and I wasn't trying to mentor them, but we just kind of thought, okay, there's got to be more to life than what we're experiencing. We were all, at least in some level of our journey with the Christian faith, and that we said, let's just figure this out together.
Yeah.
And they were all morning people too, so we would get together and have breakfast on Thursday mornings at 6 o'clock, 6:30, and we did life together, and we weren't trying to mentor one another, but we were mentoring one another. And sometimes we'd study a book of the Bible together. Sometimes we'd just read a book together. And sometimes we'd just share life together. And that blessed me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we're going to move into the last section of the path, talking about heart. And I'm gonna wrap it up we're gonna wrap this section around 3 questions. Dr. John Maxwell, one of my favorite authors, preachers, leadership development people, he asked 3 questions, and the first one is, what do you cry about? What is that burden that just it just provides that fuel to the fire? That's like, I got to go make a difference with that. What is that? What makes you cry? And then he asked the question, what do you sing about? What brings you the greatest joy in your life? And then the last question he asked is, what do you dream about? And that is, if you could do anything and make any kind of a difference, what would that be? So let's just kind of step through those. What do you cry about? What's a burden in your life?
That's real easy. So 12 years ago, my son Duncan was diagnosed with a very rare genetic condition called Friedreich's ataxia. From a genetic standpoint, it should be easy to fix. One gene has mutated in his body, and that gene prevents your nervous system from processing an enzyme called frataxin, which is essentially food for your nervous system. And so what happens is, it's over time, it's progressive, and so your nervous system kind of starts to wither from the extremities in, and so it affects your balance, your mobility, your dexterity, your speech. It kind of starts in the extremes and moves in, and it's progressive. And as of right now, there is no cure. And so and it's not just him. I cry for him. I cry out to God for him. But he has opened my eyes to see that everybody's going through something. Mm-hmm. His just happens to be genetic. And I'll never forget the day we got a call. He had a genetics test at MUSC in Charleston. And we got a call from the neurologist and said, I'd like for you to come in tomorrow and let's discuss. I think we know what's going on with Duncan. And oh boy, I'll never forget that day. It was a Monday, and I went into our old church building on our campus, which we use as kind of a chapel. And man, I just laid out on the floor and I just cried out to God, just Lord, make this something simple. You know, take it away from him. Whatever it is, give it to me. I'll take it. He's 12 and I've had plenty of life experiences. I would gladly take this for my kid. And I can't say it was an audible voice, but when you make a habit of spending time with the Lord and reading the Bible every day, you can recall things. And so I just got this reminder, Mark 9:24. So I opened the Bible to Mark 9:24, and that is the story in the Gospel of Mark where there's a man who's got a young son who's demon possessed, and Jesus had been up on the Mount of Transfiguration, and the other disciples were down trying to heal this boy, and they can't do it. And so Jesus comes down off the mountain and says, what in the world is going on? And the father, he's so desperate for his son to be healed, and he says, your disciples have been praying for my son. They can't heal him. Can you? And Jesus says, well, can I? Of course I can. Or he said, if you're willing. He says, well, of course I'm willing. And so he said, I'm willing if you believe. And the father says, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. And then Jesus heals the son. And so I'm just laying on the floor, just crying out to God, saying, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. Heal my kid.
That's so true. We live in that struggle.
Yeah, it's a tension. It's a tension. And anyway, next day, went down to Charleston, got this devastating diagnosis, went back home. That was the longest 2-hour ride that I ever remember. And anyway, came home, ate a little something, but nobody really felt like eating. And Duncan went to bed, and our daughter Hannah went to bed, and Sean and I were just sitting up in the bed, just processing the day, just crying. And anyway, I said, this came to me yesterday. Jesus did heal this guy's son. The guy did believe, even though he had a little unbelief and just needed some proof. So we're going to cling to that. The very next morning, I know exactly where I was standing at the foot of the bed. Shauna was in our bathroom putting on her makeup. It was not an audible voice because she was only about 4 or 5 feet away from me. She didn't hear it. But I clearly heard, trust me, I've got this. And I thought, well, I was really hoping you were going to say, yeah, I'm going to heal him. But I'll trust you that you've got this. And it's been 12 years. We've had setback after setback. And Duncan will have life will get kind of normal, and then the condition progresses, and then he has a setback, and that becomes the new normal, and it's hard. But what it's done is it's given me and Duncan street credibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you can very clearly see his struggles because he can't walk on his own anymore. He uses a wheelchair, and he's got some challenges that most people his age, most people my age, don't have. But because of that struggle, because of that challenge, people haven't done it in a while, but there was a time when people would go to Duncan and ask Duncan to pray for them, and they wouldn't come to me.
Wow.
And I was okay with that because I said, well, they see something in my kids, so I'm good with that. We all have ministry to do. So that's what makes me cry. There's a lot of pain and suffering in the world. God doesn't want us to go through pain and suffering. Some of it's self-imposed. Some of it is just sin, and we live in a fallen world. Most people don't want to talk about sin anymore, but it's a real thing. It's all around us. It's in us. But because of that, not only do I want to see him healed, I want to see other people healed. And so even though it makes me cry and frustrates me, it's actually blessed my ministry. And so I'm not a healer. I don't claim to be a healer, but because I'm willing, God has used me to pray for people that have gotten healed. He's the healer, not me.
Absolutely.
But that has really transformed my ministry because I'm passionate about that because I live with it every single day. And so that makes me cry, but at the same time, it's become who I am and part of my ministry.
I think you answered the cry and sing together right there. Maybe as you were saying that something that a burden, something that you cry about, has become something because what God told you at the foot of the bed. What was that phrase again?
Trust me, I've got this.
He says, "I've got this. Trust me, I got this." We want the trust me, I'm gonna take you out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
But you said that it was not that taking it away, but it's walking through that with you has give you credibility and him credibility to be able to speak in other people's lives who are going through things.
Right. And everybody's going through something.
Yeah.
Everybody. And again, it's back to the mask thing. We usually wear masks, even in church.
Yes.
Can you believe it that Christians wear masks in church because they don't want people to see what they're really struggling with? And that's a huge mistake.
Yep.
The church is not a museum for dead saints. The church is a hospital for people that need healing. Physical, emotional, spiritual, and deliverance. And
absolutely.
And unfortunately, we go and we wear our Sunday best and we put on those masks so we look like
we show up like the doctors instead of understanding we're the patients.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Jesus himself says, "Physician, heal yourself."
That's right.
And that doesn't work.
That's right.
But we're looking at a poster right over here on the wall that's, it's a great commission. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And I will be with you to the end of the age. So Jesus never says it's going to be easy to go. It's not going to be easy to make disciples. It's not going to be easy to convince people they need to be baptized. But he does say do it, and I will be with you in the middle of it. Yeah. And I cling to that, man. I need the presence of the Holy Spirit with me. We all do, but absolutely. I see it. But a lot of people don't see it. They miss it. Yeah. I need it.
So what makes you sing? What brings you greatest joy?
Sean Richardson is our youth minister, and he and I have kind of gotten into the habit of sharing small victories with one another because I think we want the miraculous and and I even pray, Lord, please show up and show off. And he answers that prayer, but sometimes it's in smaller ways. It's like Elijah in the cleft of the rock. It's in the small whispers, not in the lightning and the thunder. It's in the small whisper. So I sing about the small victories and the goodness of God that I get to see. Yeah. And that blesses me. It encourages me to keep going when, it'd be real easy to say, Lord, this is just too hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And apparently that happens a lot to people in our calling because it's hard. And my adopted grandmother was right. You need that protection in Psalm 91 all the time. But when you can see God actually working in your own life, in the lives of others, even teaching and preaching, you kind of see these light bulbs seem to go off in somebody's mind and they make that connection. I sing about that.
Yeah. So what you cry about, what you sing about, what you cry about is, here's the deal, everybody's got something.
Everybody.
What you sing about, but everybody's got something to celebrate.
Absolutely.
They don't always have to be the big things. And if we celebrate those small things, over time.
Perfect example happened to me Monday night in our men's ministry group. We meet together once a month, and I did a little teaching. We got ready to eat a meal, but we had a younger guy in this group that 37 years old needed a hip replacement. You don't see that often in a 37-year-old. And I said, well, let's pray for him. And so we all gathered around. I anointed him with oil, and we laid hands on him and started. And I said, well, anybody can chime in. I don't have a monopoly on prayer, but anybody can chime in. And kind of when it feels like this is over, I'll kind of wrap it up. And his dad prayed for him first. And his dad is a very godly man. I've never questioned his dad's faith, but I've never personally heard his dad pray out loud. And so, to me, that was a small victory, but worth singing about. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to embarrass him or call him out, but I did use it as a teaching moment and say, men, did you just hear this guy just prayed for his son? If we all went home and prayed for our families, do you know how different this world would be? That's worth singing about.
Yeah, that's good.
So that was just something that just happened just a few days ago.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you cry about? What do you sing about? The last one is what do you dream about? What is that? I just can't want that big. I want to make this difference. I'd love to be able to. What do you dream about?
Gosh, I dream about a lot of things. Maybe I have ADD dreams. But
ADD dreams.
ADD dreams. Lord, you got to keep me focused. I've seen in my own family. I'm kind of a workaholic by nature, and so I have to get reined in sometimes because sometimes you can get so focused on what you do that you forget that you need to also be doing those same things for your family. And so I'm trying to do better, staying focused and pouring into my own family. But at the same time, I want to pour into other families. And again, because we live in the South, the Bible Belt, but whether we want to admit it or not, there are a lot of people walking around us that look like a Christian, smell like a Christian, sound like a Christian, but they really don't know who Jesus. They know about Jesus, but they don't know Jesus. And again, if we just took care of our families, this world would be a different place.
So true.
And so I'm trying to get better focusing on my own family, but I also want to help other people with their families. And so one of the ways that we do that at St. Paul's Church is we have a preschool, Mother's Morning Out in a preschool, and this is I think our 22nd year. And so Sean Richardson, our youth minister, he also has young children, and so he was trying to figure out, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to teach the faith to my boys. And so he figured out, well, if I'm trying to figure out how to do this with my boys and I learned something, maybe I should share this with other parents. And so we've kind of got this two-front approach. So I've encouraged Sean, and he's done a great job with a ministry that we call The Village, which is teaching parents and grandparents how to pass the faith along to the next generations of their family. At the same time, we're using our day school as our mission field because they need Jesus in their families too. Yeah. And they're on our campus 5 days a week. So why aren't we pouring more into them? It's not just that we're teaching their kids about Jesus and getting them ready for kindergarten, but let's teach them the Christian faith. Let's be a part of the team instead of them using us as a transaction. I want my kids to have preschool. If you tell them about Jesus, that's all the better. And then I'll pay you for that.
Yep.
Whatever. Let us be part of your team. Let us help you 5 days a week. If you want to worship with us, we'll do it on Sundays. And we'll teach you to teach it at home instead of us teaching it, and maybe you reinforce it. We're trying to reverse the trend. Right. That's what's happened in the past 50 to 60 years. The trend has been, if you want your kid to know Jesus, you bring them to church, you take them to Sunday school, take them to youth group, maybe VBS in the summer, and you hope that the professional teaches your kid. And that is not biblical. The biblical model is the parents teach the kids, and the worshiping community comes alongside and helps to reinforce it. Yep. Because at best, I'm with someone's kid. If they come to church on Sunday, maybe they come to our Wednesday night discipleship. At best, I'm exposed to their kid no more than 3 hours a week. Well, there's 165 hours left in that week, and the parents are with them so much more. So anyway, using our ministry and our preschool, we're trying to pour into other families like I'm trying to pour into mine, because that is the biblical model for teaching the faith to the next generation.
Yep. I love that. So the dream is that families own passing the faith to the rest of the family, and over and over and over. You want to see that in your
Right.
own life, and you want to see that in the life of those that you have influence in.
And again, whether it's me or whether it's the parent or grandparent, you can teach your child about Jesus. They're gonna have to make that commitment for themselves. But they got a much greater chance of making that commitment if they've been poured into, like I was poured into,
right,
by my parents and my church family and mentors and stuff
yeah.
like that. So it's just a very important piece, but it is a big piece of the puzzle of.
Yeah, you're right. And as parents and as grandparents, we're going to teach our kids and grandkids about Jesus one way or the other.
One way, you're a witness, whether you're a good witness or a
one
bad
way or
witness.
the other.
Right.
So that dream of seeing a family, you impacting your family, and seeing that multiplied out, that's a pretty phenomenal dream.
And because of the growth of the area, I think the tendency, I don't know if you experienced this in your own ministry, but I think there's a tendency for pastors, it's really easy to get worldly. You think, if I'm not the biggest and the best and the greatest, and if I'm not growing, if I'm not buying property and building buildings and reaching lots of people, something might be wrong. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think you got to be real careful that you're not building your own kingdom instead of building the
Right.
kingdom of God. So I check myself all the time because it's not about me. However, we've run out of space with our preschool, and we could reach so many more people if we had some more room. So we're really praying about how can we grow this ministry to reach more families with the good news about Jesus, because it's really good news.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah.
All right, so we've walked down that path: purpose, arrival, transformation, and heart. And I hope that you have enjoyed that as Jason and I have had an opportunity to have that discussion and kind of talking through that. I know I've learned a lot and been encouraged through this whole process. So
I've been blessed too.
we're going to close with two things that we always do with every guest. Is first, we're going to do the wheel of real. I'm going to give you a chance to spin that. We'll ask a question. And you get a chance to answer that. Once we're done with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Say whatever you want to say. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. Shout outs, whatever you want to do. And then when you're done with that, I'll wrap it up. And then we'll be done. So let's get to the wheel of real. This is one of my favorite ones. Favorite time. So do you feel give it a spin?
Feels like the price is right.
I know it. Number two. Number two. That's the hardest one on the whole sheet. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, great.
No. Here's one. This is about impact. It says, who had the biggest impact on your life, and what's one thing that they taught you that stuck? Who had the biggest influence, and what's one thing that stuck with you from that?
Gosh, that's a hard question because I've been blessed with so many people that have had just huge impacts in my life.
Can I help you narrow this down?
Sure.
Let's go back to Teeny.
Teeny. Yeah.
Teeny. Okay,
Yeah,
Teeny. You've already discussed that she had an incredible impact in your life. From what she taught you, mentored you, poured into you, what's from her, what's one thing that has stuck?
Well, that's easy. I think the thing that I learned from her was unconditional love. She was not biologically related to me. She was not my grandmother. And yet she was every bit of my grandmother. And she and my grandmother were so close. They were kind of Thelma and Louise. And in some ways, I kind of felt sorry for Teeny because she and my grandmother were so close. She said one time to me, maybe my sister heard this, but I know I heard it. And she said, I was so close to your grandmother that when she died, it hurt me so much that I really didn't want to get close to anybody else again. And I thought, that's sad. I mean, yeah, I'm sure my grandmother was a pretty cool lady, but life goes on, and there are other people. Anyway, but at the same time, I think my sister and I, we were those people that she got that close to. And we live next door to one another, and of course, we live in what would be comparable to Elm Street, Laurel Street, 5th, 6th Avenue in Conway. That's kind of East Bennettsville. That's the kind of downtown historic district where I grew up. And so our houses were The only thing that separated our house from her house was a driveway. So,
Right.
Anyway, even in the summertime, my parents were at work, um, and if my sister and I, when we were still young enough to work, if we didn't come over to her house by late morning, she called us. She said, "Are you coming over here to eat or what? This food's gonna get cold." And she picked us up from school. Um, she kept an eye on us during the summer, and she didn't have to do that. And she was not a blood relative, and yet she was every bit of a grandmother to us. And so that was really unconditional love. And it was just odd that, maybe it's odd that my sister and I were, little, and our best friend was old enough to be our grandmother.
Yeah.
I'm born in 1971. Teeny was born in 1911. So she was
Wow.
70 years older than me, or maybe 1912. But she was 70 years older than me, yet she was our best friend. And anyway, so I think what I learned from her was just that unconditional love. And you can be family even if you're not blood related.
Yeah. That's good.
That was a huge influence on me.
Yeah. Choosing to love somebody because you want to, not because you have to.
Yeah.
Big lesson. All right. Jason, mic is yours. You get to talk about whatever you want to, announce anything, give some promos, whatever you want to do.
Great. Well, we're just a couple weeks away from Easter. And again, we kind of live in a Christian culture. And even if you're not an active member of a church, most people in our world would probably at least go to church on Christmas and Easter. Yeah. Well, Easter is upon us. Easter will be here in just a couple of weeks. And but what I want to invite everybody to worship with us or find a church home to worship with. But the other thing I want to remind people is the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen in a vacuum. There are events leading up to his death and resurrection that were all equally important because nothing happens in a vacuum. And so one of the things I think we do really well at St. Paul's Church is celebrating what we call Holy Week, and I call it the 8 days that changed the world. From Palm Sunday to Easter, if you read the Gospels, there's something that happens every day of that week leading up to Jesus' crucifixion and death on Good Friday to his resurrection on Easter Sunday. And so I would encourage anybody, whether you come to our church or go to another church, but look at the big picture. Jesus, for the resurrection to happen, all these other events had to happen first. And so him entering into Jerusalem on a donkey with people shouting Hosanna and casting palm branches. And we celebrate that on Palm Sunday. That was important. For us, we do a Tuesday evening healing service because the prophet Isaiah says that by the wounds of the suffering servant of God, who we know as Jesus, by his wounds we are healed. And I know, because I've seen it, I know God still heals people today. And so we do a healing prayer service on Tuesday night of Holy Week. And then Thursday, we call Maundy Thursday. That's when Jesus celebrated the Passover with his followers and reinterpreted it and made himself, or declared, I am this Passover lamb. It's actually my blood that's going to deliver you from sin and death, like the Passover lamb delivered the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt, and the angel of death. So we do a Maundy Thursday service, and we do a foot washing because Jesus washed his disciples' feet. It's humbling and powerful all at the same time. And so the clergy, myself and a deacon and some other ordained folks that are associated with our church, we actually wash the feet of people in the congregation that come up for a foot washing. And it's actually harder for the person sitting in the pew to drop that mask to have a foot washed than it is for me to wash. But it really blesses me because it reminds me, Jesus told his disciples, if I've washed your feet as a humble servant, then you should also wash other feet as a humble servant. Yeah. It keeps me humble and real. And anyway, and then we celebrate Holy Communion together because Jesus took the bread and the wine of Passover and said, this is my body, this is my blood. And so we celebrate communion at that Maundy Thursday service. And then as Jesus left the Passover meal and went into the garden and was eventually stripped bare, we actually strip our church bare of all the decorations and the candles and the things on the altar and strip it bare just like Jesus would strip bare for us. Turn the lights down. We recite Psalm 88, which is the most solemn, sorrowful psalm in the whole Bible. It's really powerful. It really puts you into the story. And then Good Friday at noon, Jesus was on the cross by noon, and we have a Good Friday noon service. Again, a lot of people, I personally know people that will avoid going to church on Good Friday because it's too messy. I don't like that, to think that Jesus, had to die on the cross. That was the most horrific form of torture ever invented. And some people it's too messy. And yet it had to happen. That was the plan. So if you don't experience the atoning sacrifice of Jesus, the resurrection doesn't make sense. Anyway, so we do a noon Good Friday service. And we also do another prayer and devotion service at 7 p.m. on Good Friday called Stations of the Cross, which again, we have some carvings on the wall of our church that represent kind of 14 stops that Jesus made along the way, going from his trial with Pontius Pilate going all the way to the cross of Calvary. About a 30-minute prayer and devotion service. Read some scripture passages, say some prayers at each of the stops. And then on Saturday, we're going to do the Great Easter Vigil, which many churches don't do anymore. Actually, we haven't done one in a while. But the Great Easter Vigil, for hundreds and hundreds of years, people were prepared for baptism, and then you were baptized at the Easter Vigil, so then you could celebrate the resurrection as a born-again, baptized Christian and receive your first communion. So we're going to do an Easter Vigil on Saturday night. That would be April the 4th. And we're going to do baptism. And so that's going to be really exciting. Again, it puts you in the story. When you're in the story, you understand the context. It makes sense here and here.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on Easter Sunday, we're going to have 2 Easter worship services. One almost at sunrise, so for early birds like me, there'll be a worship service at 7:45. And then because we want to reach families, we're doing a humongous Easter egg hunt at 9 with the thought of encouraging families to stay for our 10 o'clock Resurrection Sunday service. All coming up in just a couple weeks. And again, that was something that impacted me when I could put it all. You can memorize little bits and pieces of scripture, and that's helpful. But when you understand the big picture and can put it all in context, it is powerful.
So I want to find more information about that. Where do I go?
So our church website is www.stpaulsconway.org, or you can find us on Facebook or on Instagram. We have a YouTube channel, St. Paul's Conway, and so we're there, and we're right on Main Street, 710 Main Street, right in the middle of town, and so we're pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Well, so if you're looking for something to be a part of, that's a pretty incredible week to be a part of. You're right. A lot of people they go on the Christmas and Easter is when they go. And so, you know what? And we're glad you do.
Yeah.
We're glad that you are going to be a part of things on Christmas and Easter, and you're always welcome, regardless if it's at Jason's church or our church. You know what? The most important thing is that you start a journey with Jesus, and we would love to be able to encourage, speak into your life, and do life together with you in any way we can to help you on that journey. So, Jason, thank you so much. I have been encouraged. I've been challenged. I've laughed some. I've been reminded that, you know what, burdens break our hearts, but everybody's got a burden. And we got a lot more to celebrate than we think we do.
Exactly.
And we need other people in our lives to put their arms around us and also to push us forward when it comes to that. So I hope that you've enjoyed as we walk down the path with Jason, as we've gone through this whole thing. We talked about what it knows to know Jesus. What does it mean to to walk that path with Him. We talked about that. And so when it comes to Conway, I think both of us would agree this is a pretty awesome place to be a part of. And you can find your place here. You can find your place in Conway. So if you're interested in sharing your story, that's one of the things that we love to be able to do through this podcast is give people a chance to share their story about their pathway to Conway. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. It's simple as just my name, Jay, at pathwaychurch146.com. And that 146 comes from John 14:6. Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And that's part of who we are as Pathway Church. But along the way, everybody's got a story. And so thanks so much again for sharing yours, Jason. And I look forward to hearing more about your story and your path here to Conway as well. I always say it, close with this little tagline. Until next time, take your next step on your path. Awesome. Man, two preachers talking.